now. Okay. So uh, you can tell me how bad things are along the way, and we'll get started here. I'm Bob, W83PZO with the Holmesburg Amateur Radio Club, and in Philadelphia. And nice meeting up with everybody here, and appreciate you joining us. And with that, Dan, I'll just turn it over to you and listen to your wonderful presentation.
Well, we'll see how wonderful it is. Let me share my screen. Where is it?
And Windows, it's at the bottom of green. Should be.
Yeah, I can't. I found the right. Oh, there.
Okay, we are seeing it, so you're good.
Right. So, well, thanks for coming. I appreciate you all being here. Um, Kind of a funny story. When I so this is sort of a warmed over, and that sounds worse than it is. But I gave this presentation actually 8 years ago at Dayton, and so I had to. And when I say warmed over, I should have said updated, but it was kind of odd to me that it was that long ago. I didn't think it was quite that long ago, but that's the way it goes. And so this is all about how I teach a one-day tech class. And this is how I do it. That's not necessarily to say how you should do it, right? Um, and I can't take credit, obviously, for the one-day tech class. This idea had been bouncing along for a while now before I picked up on it. And when we started doing this, well, I don't know, probably close to 15 years ago now, there was a lot of criticism, and there probably still is in some quarters about a one-day tech class. And they're saying, well, it's doesn't teach anybody anything. It just teaches them the test, which is kind of true. But that level of criticism seems to have gone away. So I think in practice, this idea has proven its worth. Um, Back then, and 8 years ago, they used to call it a ham cram. Ham, I guess some people still do. And in the way I teach it, it's 6 hours of instruction. In fact, I've got this down to a science, so much of a science that I usually get started at 9 a.m. and we take 10 or 15-minute break in the morning, then a half an hour for lunch, and then another 10 or 15-minute break in the afternoon. I've got this down to such a science now that I hit that last question right at 3:30. I amaze myself sometimes. But so you get 6 hours of instruction. And I think this on the next slide here. Whoops, not the next slide. So the when people say there's not enough instruction, what I always come back with is, what's a maybe a typical multi-day class? Maybe 6 or 7 or 8 2-hour sessions. Well, I would posit that you're not going to be able to teach people that much more in that extra 8 to 10 hours. It is just, I mean, you think about all the material there, there's just no way you're going to teach them that much more in that little bit of extra time. So anyway, that's one of my rationales for teaching one-day tech class. And so the question is, well, why do we do it? Well, this is an example of why I do it. This young woman was in one of my classes quite a while ago now, judging by my face there. Yeah, and the amount of dark hair I still have in this photo. But she was so happy when she passed the test that we had to take this picture. But this is why I do it, because of the students. Um, there's number of other reasons. One, it's easier on the students. They don't have to. It doesn't get dragged out. What I found too is that if you teach multiple day classes, multiple week classes, people just are going to drop out. They're just going to drop out. And of course, that's a lot harder in a 1 day tech class. If they've made a commitment to be there for the day, they're usually there for the day. I actually did have a guy quit quit one time. It was kind of funny. He was sitting there in class, and in the first couple of hours, he was just dropping off. You could see he was dropping off. And by the time we hit the first break, he had fallen asleep. And I knew the guy too, so he said, "Well, Dad," he says, I was just up really late last night. I said, "Look, don't worry about it. Come back next time." And he did, and he eventually got his license. It's also easier on the instructors. Instructors don't have to make a multiple week commitment to doing this, right? And a lot of people, I would almost say more people learn better by doing than by, having some jamoke like me in front of the class lecturing to them. So, the whole intent is to get people their license so they can start learning by doing. That's the key. Yeah, so traditional classes don't give students that much more instruction time. Um, Despite complaints that students don't learn the material, they're bound to learn something. Even if they memorize the answers to every question, which some people have, you're bound to learn something, right? And so I don't know. That's another one of my rationales here. And again, no, or at least very few dropouts. The first thing you got to do, so it's more than just teaching the class, right? It's finding the students, finding a venue, doing all that kind of stuff. So finding a venue, where will you teach this? Find out where you're going to teach this class. I've taught a class in every one of these different venues except town halls. I haven't taught it in a town hall yet, but I've taught at maker spaces. My last class was in a maker space. Public libraries. I taught at Ann Arbor District Libraries a couple of times. Red Cross. Our club used to have a pretty good relationship with the local Red Cross, and I taught classes there. And churches are they have space for large crowds and assemblies like that. So they're great places to teach. I probably should have put here also universities. Mostly lately, when I teach here in Ann Arbor, I've been teaching at the in a room at the University of Michigan. They have a really great club there, and in fact, I'm going to take partial credit for their having a great club because I teach a class there once or twice a year, and they get a lot of students show up, and those students join the club there, and they have a really going club there. And they got at least one ARDC grant to fund their station there too. So and why? Because they had an active club already. So it all works together. You see, it all works together. Um, Here's some considerations when looking for a venue. Make sure it's going to accommodate the number of students that you expect. The one thing about this makerspace we did last time was that we kind of shoehorned it in, right? They have a big space where they can hold, up to maybe 20, 25 people. And then they had a smaller space. Well, the bigger space had already been reserved for the day we decided to teach the class. So we had to cram the students into a little bit smaller space. In that, I think they actually had to limit all the arrangements were made through the makerspace in this case. Usually I do it myself. I have people register with me and then I teach the class. In makerspace case, I had them all register through the makerspace. So they actually had to limit the number of people because the space we were in couldn't handle more than 12 or 15. I forget the exact amount. Make sure the space is available from 8:30 or 9 a.m. to about 6 p.m. So like I say, I usually start at 9 a.m., but people start arriving around 8:30. And even though I end at 3:30, yeah, 6 p.m. might be a little bit late. I don't think we've ever run quite till 6 p.m., but it takes time to give the tests. If you have 20 or 25 people, your VE team has got to handle that many people, and that all can take time, especially if you're going to allow them to take the general class test after they pass the tech test, which our VE team does. So, that can take some time. So, just make sure you can have the space that long. As I mentioned earlier, that's why I didn't do the class in Philadelphia tomorrow because they only said I could have that space from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and it just wasn't enough time. And the space should have a chalkboard or whiteboard. Um, I'll get into this a little bit later, but I don't use any PowerPoints. If you want to use PowerPoints, well, that's a sort of a different story. But I just use a chalkboard or a whiteboard. And actually, that's kind of a funny thing too. I had this on in this presentation 8 years ago, but the only time I actually used the chalkboard, old-fashioned chalkboard, was at one of these hacker conferences last year. The school where it was held at didn't have whiteboards, so I had to write actually with chalk. That was kind of amusing from a retro teaching aspect. And the well, I'll talk about this a little bit more later too. But the nice thing about this particular line is you only need that, right? You don't need to have power. You don't need to have a projector. You don't need to have all that fancy stuff. Oops, wrong way. Um, Scheduling your class. So, dates and frequencies depend on your situation. Um, yeah, I kind of don't do January, May, and September anymore. I do usually September and January. Sometimes I'll do May, but not quite as much anymore. VE availability. This is can be a challenge for people. Um, Fortunately, here in Ann Arbor, we have a great VE team. There are at least 12 people on the VE team, and when I suggest a date, in the last 5 or 6 years, when I suggested a date, they have not failed to come up with a team. And because some of these classes can be kind of big, they'll come up with 6 or 8 people uh, to handle the testing, which is really amazing. You only need three, right? But if you had three people trying to test 20 students, that could be tough. I mean, it's doable, but it could be tough. And at that point, you're going to end up running till 6 p.m. or maybe even later, just because of the amount of paperwork. Although, I don't know if I don't know if any of you are VEs, but they've gone to this electronic stuff now, and that really speeds up the process. So maybe you could handle it with three VEs. I don't know. Anyway, the last point here is avoid dates of regularly scheduled test sessions. Here in Ann Arbor, we do a test session every second Saturday of the month. So I avoid teaching a class on the second Saturday of the month. I usually try to go for the end of the month, and that gives them at least 2 weeks between test sessions. Sometimes that doesn't work out. Sometimes um, I'll end up doing it on the first or the third. But again, these guys here in Ann Arbor are just so great that that's just not a problem. So, after you found a venue and a VE team, you got to find the students. So here's a list of places to um, uh, solicit students. And one of the things, and these work really really well. Um, the one thing that let's see, yeah. So the next slide here, the biggest thing though that I found for me that works the best for me is a mailing list. So if you go to my website, you'll see right on the homepage it says I teach classes, and it usually gives the date of the next class if I I'm gonna if I have one scheduled. Then I say, well, if you can't make that date, or if there's no date listed above, sign on to my mailing list. And they sign up for the mailing list, and then a month or so before the next class, I mail everybody. I send out a message to that mailing list saying, "Hey, yeah, we're doing the next class on such and such a date, and here's how to sign up for it." And this really works the best, right? This really works the best. And I'll put people on the list too. Like if I meet them at a ham fest or like these hacker events or wherever, I'll just put them on the mailing list when if they or even just running into them around town. If they express any kind of interest in taking this class, I'll put them on my mailing list. And I only send out a message once in a great while, so that it's not like a big obligation. They're not going to be getting a lot of junk mail from me. So they're usually glad to stay on the mailing list. And people that maybe have been on the list for years will finally come to a class because it just happened to work out for them. And that anyway, that works out. Encourage your friends to refer students. And not just your ham friends, but your other any friends you happen to have. And I put ham clubs and MCOM groups on the mailing list. So you can go to the ARRL website, right, and request a list of clubs, and you can even download it in CSV format, I think, and it'll tell you the contact names at all the clubs in your area. So I'll go in there and say, give me all the clubs within 50 miles of zip code 48103, and it'll pop it out, and I'll look for the contact addresses, and then I'll send all those clubs, and put them on the list, and they'll get emails from me when my next classes are coming up. And you can do the same with MCOM groups. Like if your state has a MCOM group, or your county or whatever, put them on the list. Skywarn, put them on the list. This really is worked out the best for me. Next thing you have to do is choose a study guide. Well, I just happen to have one. And the cool thing is really is that it's free, right? The students can download a PDF of my study guide for free. And that I'm happy to do that. So not only that, and this was a bit of serendipity too, is that the order in which I cover the topics, and it's not the same as the question pool. The order in which I cover the topics just happens to work out best for the 1 day tech class. So when I do the 1 day tech class, I start at chapter 1 and go through chapter 10. And my script, if you will, which isn't really a script, and I'll explain that a little bit later, is a large print version of my study guide. So I have, let's see, I got it here. So you can't really see it, but I got a folder here of of it's just a printout of my study guide, but let's see if I can show you a page. So you probably can't see this too well, but it's a large print version. And I just go and I cover these topics just in the way the order in which they're covered in the book. And the reason it's a large print is so I can read it without having to put on my glasses during the class. So that's a little trick. But unfortunately, my eyesight is still good enough so that with this little bit larger print, I don't have to wear glasses for 6 hours. But anyway, the point here, of course, is that my study guide really works well, at least for me. And I mean, maybe it's because I'm so familiar with the actual text, but it covers the topics in the order in which I want to cover the material in a class, and that was, like I said, totally serendipitous. Um, I'll give you this is kind of a funny story too. One time I decided, well, in the afternoon I was going to reorder the sequence because I thought, well, probably I should. I forget what my rationale was, but it seemed to me that making that order a little different probably was a little bit more reasonable. But when I did that, all the students said, "But they followed along right in the study guide." They said, "What? We can't find that. We can't find that in the study guide." I said, "Oh yeah," because I reordered it a little bit. So anyway, you probably don't want to do that. Probably want to just follow, if you're going to use my study guide, just follow the study guide. Of course, other study guides will work too. So, I kind of push mine because I think it's pretty good and it's worked so well for me. But, if you like the ARRL study guide, fine. If you like Gordon West study guide, use that. Um, yeah, it's all really what you like to use best. I have kind of a funny story about Gordon West. One time I'm at a ham fest, maybe it was Dayton, I forget. And I was talking to a guy, and he says, yeah, I know your study guides. He says, uh, uh, of all your study guides, of all the study guides out there, yours is probably second to Gordon West. And I said, well, if I got to be second to somebody, it might as well be Gordon West. So let's talk about actually teaching the class. Like I said earlier, I don't use PowerPoints. I think my personal opinion is PowerPoints are death, especially if you're trying to cover the material quickly. And I cover all 413 questions in 6 hours. So you got to move fast, and you got to have the people pay attention, right? And PowerPoints just put people to sleep. So the only time I use any kind of PowerPoint is when I'm teaching a class where I don't have my charts. So I've made big charts of the figures, the three figures that might appear on the test. And before the class starts, I'll tape them up to the wall somewhere. Well, if I'm teaching somewhere where I don't have those charts because I didn't want to haul them with me on the plane or something, I'll project those somewhere just to use instead of my charts. But that's the only kind of PowerPoints I use. Um, and like I said, it's just because it puts people to sleep. So I always required having a whiteboard or a chalkboard, so I can actually draw on the whiteboard and chalkboard. Not only does it help me present the material, I think, and again, this is kind of maybe a silly thing, but I think an important thing. I think my mood, just moving around like that, helps keep people awake, helps keep them awake and paying attention. That's one reason I really don't like teaching Zoom classes because I can't move around really, and I have to almost use um, uh, kind of PowerPoints, but not. When I teach online, I have this program called Sketch, and it lets me write sort of on the screen, but it's still not the same as a whiteboard. It's still not the same as a whiteboard. So no PowerPoints. I tell lots of stories from my experience in ham radio. I've been a ham a long time, like looks like most of you have been, and so I'm sure you've got lots of stories. They come to you as you're teaching. You can even think about them beforehand, but they'll come to you as you're teaching. And I have a short video here of one of the stories I tell. And let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Uh, Okay, I'm gonna. How do I stop the sharing? Can't see my pointer here. Oh, there. So this is a recording of one of the classes, and this is the story. This is the most popular story I tell. Because when I got back on the air, I put up this 40-meter dipole in my backyard. I put my antenna analyzer on it, tuned it up, it was working great. I start calling CQ, right? This is Saturday afternoon. First thing that happens, my wife comes down and says, "What the heck are you doing?" I said, I put up the antenna, I'm calling CQ. Says, "You're opening and closing the garage door." Somehow, and so what happened? What happened here? I know it was hilarious. So here's like my house, right? And the antenna was running from the corner of the house out to a tree in the backyard. And the garage doors are here. There's two garage doors. And I was only opening this one. So there's a switch plate here, and the switch is connected to each garage door opener. Well, enough RF energy was coupling from the antenna into this wire so that and these garage door openers have no like filtering on their inputs. So enough RF was coupling in there to make it think someone was pushing the button. It was opening and closing every time I hit the key. So what was the solution? The solution was to put this ferrite choke right here, and that prevented any RF from that was being picked up by this wire from getting into the garage door opener. Problem solved. So that's the story I tell when I discuss that. There used to be two questions about ferrite chokes on the test. Now there's just one, but I still tell that story. The other story I tell, which is about well, probably about 15 years ago now, I had two kids in the class. They were like 10 and 11, and the we got to the point where I was talking about Ohm's law, and so I said, "Yeah, it's Ohm's law is E equals I times R." And then using some simple algebra, you get the other forms, R equals E over I and I equals E over R. And these two kids in the back said, "Yeah, but we haven't had algebra yet." And so that was kind of funny. And those two kids, and I always tell that story because they were kids, they were 10 and 11. Those two kids actually passed the test that day. And one of them today is still today a very active ham radio operator. So I always feel good about that. But anyway, that's an example of one of the stories I tell. And let me go back to the other. Okay. So when I mean, it's good to tell stories, but you do have to watch the time. If you're in a place where you have a hard stop on the testing, then you really do have to wrap it up by that time. Like we talked. I used to teach this class at a local kids science museum, and they had said we had to be out by 5 p.m. So that only gave the VE team an hour and a half to complete the testing, and so we did have to really watch the time. Um, that's another factor here. This next bullet point, let students ask questions, but don't get bogged down answering the questions. There's a lot of uh, I mean, it's a lot of technology on here, right? And you could dig you could dig in real deep sometimes, but you really don't have that the time to do a really deep dive, right? So you have to kind of watch that. And what I tell the students is, you know, I'll please ask questions, but if the answer gets too involved, I'll have to say sometimes, come and see me after the class and we'll talk about that topic rather than, get off on a tangent during the class. I mentioned this before too. We take two short breaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then a half an hour for lunch. And I've even written the time for breaks on my script. So when I get to that page, it says take a break. Okay, time for a break, So just to remind me of that. Um, So I have a pretty good record. I haven't kept really good records of all the people that have been in my class and how many maybe are even still hams. But the people that pass the test after this 1 day class is between 85 and 90%. And one thing I should have mentioned, I should add this to the slides. I didn't think about it. Is I tell everybody to read through the manual, read through the study guide at least once before coming to class. That gets people a little bit familiar, at least with the material and some of the questions, and that works better. The people that end up not passing are usually the ones that didn't do that, that thought that somehow they were going to be able to absorb it all in 6 hours. So anyway, that's an important thing, and I suggest people do that. But when they do, people do that. I have about 85 or 90% pass rate, and so I mean that's pretty good. I had one guy who actually attended the class 3 times and failed each time. And of course, he kept. So I guess another thing I should mention. These are old slides. I should have thought about this earlier. But one thing about the students is I ask them to pay a little bit of money to come to the class. And we don't do that in these hacker conferences, but we do it. I do it when I teach other places. And the reason for that is when you don't ask people to pay, they just won't show up. If they uh, you know feeling lazy that Saturday morning, they just won't show up. If they pay $20 though, then there's a better chance they'll show up. And what I tell people is, if you pay this money and fail the test, well, you can come back and take it again, and some people have. Yeah, and the other thing about the $20 is I don't ask students to pay it, so the students don't have to pay. But at all adults, I ask them to pay $20, and that does uh, improve the turnout. I get fewer no shows. Um, One thing about that though, so like I say, I say, well, if you fail the test, feel free to come back again, and we'll try it again. And some people have, and then they'll pass the second time. But this one guy, he took the class 3 times and failed all 3 times. And the last time he said to me, he said, you know what? I knew I should have read that book before coming to the class. And I wanted to smack the guy. I mean, not so much as a waste of my time because there are a bunch of other people in the class and they all passed, or most of them passed. But I mean, what a waste of time. He was there for 18 hours and he still didn't pass the test. Oh well. Anyway, um, following up. So one of the things I tell everybody in the class is that consider me their Elmer. And you know, if you got a question about anything about ham radio, feel free to call me or email me, and I'll help them out. And I'm always surprised how few actually do that. But I do get some, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy to help them. Um, because the only way that people are going to learn is by doing things. And if they just, buy an HT and put it on the shelf and the battery goes dead, they never do anything, then they're never really going to enjoy ham radio as much as I have. And I kind of say that's my mission. My mission in ham radio is to help people have as much fun with ham radio as I've had over the years. Um, but following up, and like I say, I don't do as good a job on this as I should be doing. And one of the things I said I'm going to do with this ARDC grant is actually come up with some kind of survey. And I actually do have some survey questions down already. Has come up with some kind of survey to survey these people after they've taken the test, and maybe even like up to a year or 2 years after, to see how they're doing. But anyway, following up is a good thing. Um, there's a couple of bullet points here. I I don't know if this article is still available, but I found this to be a good article by N0CKR about following up with new techs. And then there's a bunch of the thrust of this last bullet was thinking of some sort of follow-up classes that you could offer new techs. And yeah, some people do it, some people don't. That ham radio club in New Hampshire, the Nashua Amateur Radio Society, they do a pretty good job of it. In fact, I think they're having what they call their amateur radio boot camp next Saturday. It's either next Saturday or the Saturday after. But they cover all these kind of topics: how to program your radio, um, uh, how to use a multimeter, how to solder. And our club here in Ann Arbor, we don't have a really a formal way to do it, but we do a pretty good job of following up and helping new people get started. And that's kind of important to get people into the hobby. For more information, here's some resources. Um, this ham instructor group, I took it over from somebody, I don't know, a long time ago, and there's very little that actually is posted to it. But feel free to join it. It's still there. There's still some information on that list. Um, yeah, there's some things. And that's it. That's my presentation. If you had any questions, feel free to ask me. If not, here's my contact information, and something comes up later, feel free to contact me.
Right. Just a little curious to go around the group and what's going on in your particular club or what you hope to do in the future. And Joe, since you're the first one on my screen in the gallery, I'm going to ask you and to JJG, what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Well, not too much. I've basically I am relatively a new member to our club. Um, been a member for about 2.5 years, and the club was somewhat a little bit stagnant. That is, they had breakfast meetings once a quarter and annual, Christmas dinners, and usually some club business, on a monthly basis. And I sort of pushed them to start doing tech Saturdays. So we were successful. I was successful in getting them to get together with doing antenna launchers, doing some soldering, building Yagi antennas for fox hunts. So now we're getting a little bit more active. But the other is that about the only place we're getting students is through our community emergency response team. And we have basically two CERT teams, one which is a Pinelands club, and the other is a countywide club. So that right now, that's where we're getting some of our members, getting them invited to basically take the tech classes. And what I'm trying to do is figure out how to get more involvement. We're looking at our local Civil Air Patrol. One of our club members is a member of the Civil Air Patrol, so I'm trying to get more individuals from that group to basically start taking classes. Um, I have one person, one Elmer, who basically has been who invited me to join a club, who's been teaching the tech classes usually over the course of 2 days. Um, and he does that about once a year. So I'm here to basically try to assist him in teaching that class and maybe augment some of the teaching that he's doing and maybe pare it down to one day. As Don had mentioned, is that a 1 day class is certainly better than 2 days because some of the students do not come back, and we did notice that on the last class that we had that several of the students did not come back on day two, probably because of loss of interest. So if we can keep them to 1 day, maybe we can get more individuals actually passing, their tech classes. The idea of mailing lists, I like that list. And that's one of the things that I'll be working towards um, with Jack, basically our Elmer who's been doing some of the classes to try to develop and get some more students coming into the class and try to grow our club. Right now, we're a small club. We only have about 40 members or so. But hopefully, we're hoping to get it to grow. So that's pretty much all that I have right now.
Well, it's good. I'll just say it's good that you actually have classes. A lot of times people will ask me to come and teach a class where they are. And first off, I ask, well, do you have somebody teaching now? And oftentimes they'll say no. And I'll tell them, I'll say, look, I'll do this. I'll come and teach a class uh, wherever you are. Okay. If you first off, you have, I'd like to get some mileage money for coming, but then I need somebody to be there watching what I do so that you can then do it again next time. It really does no good if I come one time and teach a class and then they don't follow up with that. So it's good that you have regularly scheduled classes because I think well, of course, we have a really good club here. I mean, we're very active. We do all these things, and I'll say that there's of course a number of different things that feed into that, but one of them is that we teach classes, and we're always making new hams, and I mean that's just so important. Just so important.
Yeah, the one thing I did, because I do belong to two clubs.
Uh,
The other club that I belong to, we have one person, Professor Chris, who basically teaches classes. And on Mondays, he'll teach a tech class. On Tuesdays, he'll teach, the general class. And on Fridays, he'll teach the um, the extra class. But those classes are 10 weeks long. So
yeah.
it takes quite a while just to get, if you're not committed, you're not going to attend all those classes.
And then
I was committed, which was a good thing because I was able to go from tech to amateur extra over the course of 11 months.
uh,
Again, my background has nothing to do with electronics. It's that of a paramedic, but it was a new hobby that I wanted to get into. But 10 weeks is kind of long, especially in our county. I just need to pare it down to, one day would be ideal to try to get new techs and to get them, get them licensed and then get them in to join the club and start growing that club. And then we can go from there. And eventually we'll figure out how to increase the licenses from tech to general and go from there.
so I've taught several general classes too. And you know what? And this has happened almost every time. What happens with general classes seems to be the people that start the class are really interested in ham radio. Sometimes the tech not so much, or they're members of CERT team, so all they care about is getting a license. They don't really care about anything necessarily really about radio. Just they just want to be talk on the radio with their CERT team. But anyway, what happens with general classes and licensed classes is that they're so interested in it, they'll often jump classes. I mean, they'll study ahead, and then by the time you're halfway through the 10 weeks, 8 or 10 weeks, they'll know enough to pass the test. They'll go pass the test and then not show up again. And that's kind of a pain in the butt for me because I have to be there for all 10 classes. So they should come to all 10 classes.
Okay,
But
that's great.
anyway, that's that.
Uh-huh. Jesse, you're next to my screen, so what's going on in your area?
Okay, well, I'm really glad to be here and say thanks, Dan. This was a great presentation. I Dan has, in the interest of full disclosure, helped me teach he taught the general portion of the class that we were giving at NRAO, which was generously funded by the ARDC. We're sort of in I don't know what mode to call it. I call it the trying to get the hams radioactive mode. I
Mm.
guess that's the best way of describing it. Um, uh, we were developing a game. One of the PAs had this idea of creating a game, so I'm gamifying the Rat Pack's ham radio checklist. And I should also say I'm also using a model from the Maker Fair community. They have Make Magazine. They have this great skills trees that you can download. They're actually on open source, and you color in as you develop skills in a particular activity. You color in as you go, and it's really great. So the whole thing is based on these two, or informed by these two ideas or methodologies. Um, so that's where we're going right now. And so I should say, also in the interest of full disclosure, we're finishing up the ARDC grant. It'll probably be finished in June. And so I'm hunting around for things to do. And I'll probably end up working with one of the local STEM groups here in Prince George's County, Maryland, uh, and helping them get things going. Uh, they're all focused on AI and stuff like that, and I keep trying to squeeze in some RF stuff. It's like, yeah, well, um, that kind
You
of
know,
thing. That's
even think about doing a basic electronics class.
yes.
So like I that's my next thing here in Ann Arbor is to teach a basic, and we're calling it the really basic electronics class. I mean, there's a maker book, this Make Electronics, and I'm going to use this book, and
Oh, wow.
I mean, when I say really basic, I mean they're talking about connecting batteries to LEDs and resistors to start. And
Wow.
so I mean that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's great. I found this book. I don't know if you have this. This is outstanding
No,
because you
I
can
heard
make.
about it. I haven't seen it yet though.
Yeah, I got it as soon as it came out. I ordered the sucker,
Uh,
because they have breadboards in here.
uh,
Um, let's see if I can show it. So they have, you can actually, the students can actually wire up things in here and get going. And one of the issues I think I've had with the previous classes is they didn't know how it connected with real life.
yeah,
So this thing, I know a lot of students are into Raspberry Pis, or into Arduinos and
yeah,
that kind of thing. This thing also covers about uh, connecting those devices to wireless systems
yeah.
and that kind of thing. So,
Have you
uh,
heard about the project that uses a Raspberry Pi Zero and a couple op amps to make a software-defined radio?
no.
Well,
Please send me
if
that information.
yeah, yeah, I will. Because it looks like I actually even have bought the parts for it. I haven't gotten around to building it yet, there's a I'll send you all the information because it looks like a pretty simple project, but people say it works really well,
Huh.
and yeah, it's a really great project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, good. Yeah, please do send that. Um, I think that's all I got. I really appreciate this class, and uh, I've actually seen a lot of this stuff in the previous classes. I wish we hadn't. Oh, I should say that it was what it was, and it worked. We got 17 new amateurs, and let's keep it that way. Let's keep it. I want to give them support to keep going. I want them to keep going. There have been a couple students who've expressed interest in going for extra, so I'll be Elmering them or mentoring them. So
Yeah.
looking forward to that. So. That's all I got.
Well, you
Great.
know me, and you know where to get a hold of me if you.
Yes, we will be in touch. Thanks again, Dan.
All right. And Saul, I'll skip over you because we'll take our club last. Art and ABLK, I know you're involved with testing. What's going on with your other activities?
I've mostly been testing online. I haven't taught a class since 2017. So no testing. I wanted to try getting back into it again, basically. And that's about it.
Okay. Uh, Barry, N6 VOH, welcome. And I presume you're still out in California. What's going on out there?
Let me get going here. Good morning, everybody. And first of all, Dan, thanks for throwing this. It solidified what we were doing. In California here, what do we have going? We got the same struggles everybody else has with respect to finding members or finding students. The majority of our cadre comes from what I like to call as CERT guys. We've been picking up a lot of CERT, a lot of other members. As far as the diehard radio enthusiasts, at one point we did several classes for the 11-meter guys, the CB guys. We took a lot of those. I think we started with 11. We ended up with 9 getting their tech licenses.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they were using the licenses or not is a whole nother story. One other thing that Dan hit on about the additional classes, there's a group out here that does a class called What Do You Do After You Get Your ham license? And that goes into a lot of the more basic things that ham radio operators are into, and teach you how to program your handhelds and how to get on. The problem that we see here is that once a person gets a tech, they get stuck at tech and they go off and grab a handheld radio and put it in their belt and get one of those little stickers that says ham radio saves lives. And they become this instant ham, not knowing anything about the rest of the ham world. So we're working on that. But as far as the classes go, we've done them both ways. Dan, I've used your material before. I sent you an email one time, and you said go ahead and use it. And I used your material as far as having a inexpensive manual. And I've also used Gordon West. So where we are now is just getting back into a teaching profile and getting going again with grabbing some classes. Like everybody else, finding students has been a challenge. So that's pretty much where we are. I'm sure my partner Bob K6AI will have a little bit to say about it as well. But thank you for putting this on. It's very well needed. And one last thing I might add: the 1 day class or the 2 day class has been, my experience has been the best way to go for retention of students. They just come in. And what I was telling them to do was don't even show up until you complete the study guide. When we use Gordon West material, he has a 10 or 15-page study guide that calls for a bunch of questions and answers. I would say don't even show up until you've been through that, because 1 day to try to show you how to get all this material down pat just is not it's a disaster to me. If you have had no other prior anything, but to walk in cold and expect to leave with a license is a challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, that's great, Barry. Thank you. And Bob Craig, I presume Barry was referring to you. So if you'd like to add additional comments.
Good evening. This is Bob K6AI in Rancho Cucamonga. Thank you for doing the program this morning. It's very informative. And believe me, we're getting ready for a tech session in the next few weeks, and I will be using your recommendations and your expert advice. We have as my buddy Barry just said, we have a big problem of retention in the club and especially attracting younger people that would be willing to take an active part in the leadership and training of others in the club. Let's see, I've been a ham for 73 years now, and so I'm on the other end of that. Enjoyed every year of it. Thanks so much. 73.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Uh, Drew, as a newcomer here in the city, your comments.
Thank you, Bob. My name is Drew, KC3UKF. I'm a librarian with the Free Library of Philadelphia. It's great to be here. Dan, great to meet you. Thanks so much for having this today. I was really excited about it, and I think I signed up for this weekend within an hour of getting the email. So I was excited. I've been licensed since 2022. My dad is a ham. I'm the fourth ham operator in my family, and I'm really interested in bringing ham radio to my job, the free library. We've already done some testing at the free library. One of my Elmers is here. This is Art. Good to see you, Art. We've done some testing down in the Parkway, and I'm a member with two radio clubs, O Mike's, the Delaware Valley chapter, and the Philmont Mobile Radio Club, which has been great for me as a technician, just to come in and learn more about radio and kind of keep the enthusiasm up. Dan, I used your books to study for the general and for the extra, and getting to give back into the radio community as a VE and participate in testing sessions has been one of my favorite activities since getting licensed. So I'm trying to take advantage of the resources I have with rooms and venues and different library locations throughout the city, to kind of promote Radiocraft and as best I can. So I'll definitely be in touch.
I tell you, you're in a great spot to have the be on the library staff. That's just wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of curiosity when I talk about it with my coworkers and stuff. And I've gotten permission from our engineers and building departments to put antennas on top of buildings. I just have to go through the steps of making that happen and following through and getting it going. But I'm really interested in just trying to get more interest going with our young patrons. We have a lot of young adults and teen centers that would eat this stuff up just where STEM is concerned, and the Makers Fair and things like that. So
Well, geez, I mean, it's really too bad. We couldn't have arranged that class there now. Now I'm feeling bad about it.
no, it's okay. Well, I mean, it's just great to understand and kind of be put on the radar because some things do get past me, and we'll be in touch. I think there'll be plenty of other opportunities.
Hey, well, well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we could have maybe done the class at a library in conjunction with the Maker Fair.
That was possible, but we're closed on Sundays, which is why
Uh,
I hesitated.
well,
And that was
we could have done it on a Saturday, maybe. Well,
on
anyway,
there.
but
Yeah,
here's a thought for you. Here's a thought for you. One of the big things at ham radio now is this Parks on the Air, right? You heard of Parks on the Air?
I,
Well,
mhm,
you guys have entities right in the city there, right?
we do.
You could do Parks on the Air right in the city.
It's very possible. It really is. And I've done POTA. I enjoy it quite a bit. Actually, one of the first parks that I activated was in the Adirondacks up in
Yeah.
upstate New York. So, but I'm a big fan, and yeah, there's a lot of different all the sub hobbies that come with this. We can do a lot of possibilities at the library.
Oh, that's
Oh,
great.
Sure. National Radio Astronomy Observatory.
Okay.
We are under the National Science Foundation. So I should have said that. Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's great.
I'm just going back and forth about the whole library thing. My former supervisor, Liddell von Schul, is working on some kind of library thing. I'm not exactly sure what she's doing, but some of the ham side people and some of our folks at NRAO are talking about equipment libraries and all kinds of good stuff, So um,
I had a
that's
question
what
on that.
for the Philadelphia crew. Um, and first of all, I'd like to, a lot of these things are receive only. People don't have to have a license. But in terms of equipment, Drew, one day I would like to talk to you. You mentioned you have permission to put antennas on roofs. We do not at Penn, not yet. So maybe we could hook up one day. My question is, the Franklin Institute used to have a ham radio station and was a feeder of interest in hams. Does anybody know if the Franklin Institute still has a ham radio station?
No, it does not.
No,
No,
All right.
they remodeled, and uh, the plan at the time was to run it from the roof to the first floor, and there was just too much coax and line and noise, etc., that they just didn't pursue it.
Well, Penn has a beautiful station and no antennas and no students. So if anybody can help us.
Wow.
Well, I remember your antenna on top of the Moore School, Moore College of Engineering when I was a student at Penn, and you had a really big antenna up there.
We had beams. We had two towers up there.
Yeah, I know.
And what happened, Saul, is one day we came back, people came back to campus, and the antennas were gone. Like that was it.
Wow, yeah, I missed them when I wasn't active in ham radio when I was a student, but I knew that was for a ham station, and I really missed them, seeing them. Same with W3TKQ at the Franklin Institute, which is a science museum for those of you who are not. Wait, let me finish my sentence. W3TKQ was at the Franklin Institute, which you mentioned, and that's a science museum. Just so there's a lot of people here from out of town. And Penn is the University of Pennsylvania. You probably got that by now. You have to read your audience here, John. And I remember W3TKQ very well from the Franklin Institute, and it had a big influence on a lot of people here in Philadelphia. And I miss that antenna too.
Well, I'll leave it. This will be my final story. My driving with my father when I was a young kid past the Moore School, he says, "Look at those beams on that roof. That's where you know you want to go to school. You want to go to school where the beams are." And our big pitch to the dean of Moore is, "Hey, MIT has great antennas, so can't be outshone by MIT."
Okay, I gotta interject something really quick here because there's something in terms of collegiate stations, W8 EDU is the bomb.
Yeah, they're great. I've talked to them.
They are actually, if you want to look at it from a business standpoint, a profit center for CMU. There are people who give to the station, equipment and money. Alumni give to the station to keep it going. They have more gear than they know what to do with.
It's the same. It's the same here at Michigan, and that's how they got started again. Is the graduate students started asking alumni for money.
Yeah, right. So they
got money, just like Penn alumni have money, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Penn alumni have their own repeater system. That's N3KZ. So but that's not the student club. That's the alumni. That's Jeff DiPolo and 3KZ and that group.
But I thought that was hilarious. I thought there are people if CMU is smart, they will put the ham station on their out stuff that they send, their marketing stuff that they send to people, alumni, because people give specifically to that.
What really hit me was this Tex Kang. When he did a TEDx talk at Penn, and his intro is talking about jobs. Penn kids are very pre-professional. They care about jobs. And in my career, I've gotten so many job offers from my extracurricular club activities at undergrad and graduate. Basically, every club I was ever in, I ended up with a job offer out of, whether it's venture development or this or that. And that is we have great clubs at Penn. We have an electric racing club. We have an aeronautics club, and they work with industry. So when you graduate, you know people in industry. I know that the Scranton students that are working with the ham side people, when they're looking for jobs, they'll know 50 people who think they did a great job, and it's just great for the students.
I have a quick question. But Dan, when you mentioned there were three formulas, I'm changing subjects a little. When you mentioned there was three formulas that you put up on the board, which were they?
Oh, it's just the Ohm's law. E equals I times R.
Oh,
I equals E over R.
yeah.
R equals E over I.
Okay, got it. That was my question. I took some notes and I had a big question mark there. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Saul, do you want to talk about
Uh,
Holmesburg, or do
yeah,
you
I
want
was
me to
just
talk?
writing you a message that I have some. Uh, well, a couple things. I have several comments to make. As far as training is concerned, Jesse earlier mentioned RATPAC, which is the Radio Amateur Training, and I can't remember what the acronym is. Jesse, radio. What does RATPAC stand for? Do you know?
As I'm frantically looking it
Yeah,
up
it doesn't matter.
myself.
Radio Amateur Training, and it's an online resource. You
Yes.
can go. They have live lectures, and then afterwards you can see them on YouTube or other video uh, uh, media, and it's a wonderful resource. And you just go to ratpack.com, I'm pretty sure, but I'll check that out before we finish.
Yeah.
And on one of the people behind Rat Pack is K8 Zulu Tango from Ohio, and he has his own website with all kinds of lectures that he'll do for your club. And one of the lectures is called "Life After Your Technician License," and he gave that for our Heart Club one time. I guess I think that's what it's called, Life After Technician. So that it's not so that you don't wind up with that handy talkie on your shelf and never doing amateur radio again. So that's two things. The third thing is the National Electronics Museum. I'm forgetting the exact name, but it's in Maryland, and there's a teacher named K3RA, K3 Romeo Alpha, and he gives courses, 6-week courses for each type of amateur license. And right now he's starting his operating class with various activities you can do as an operator. And he gets hundreds of people at a time. It's an online course, and it's usually 6 weeks long. So if you're interested in that or referring people to that, you should write to, his name is Roland Anders, and his email address is Roland Romeo Oscar Lima Alpha November Delta dot Anders Alpha November Delta Echo Romeo Sierra at Comcast.net, and ask about his courses. And I must say, I sat in on the extra course, and it's concerned with giving you the answers to the questions on the exam, but it's much more than that. It's really a course in electronics, and so that's been very useful to me. The last thing I wanted to say is having to do with the Holmesburg Amateur Radio Club. We meet in a room in the Philadelphia Protestant Home, which is a senior living facility with, I guess, hundreds or dozens, if not hundreds, of residents, and it's a very well appointed campus. And we've had one resident of the Protestant Home come to our meetings, and he sounds very interested. And I'm trying to interest them in having a ham radio day where we can get more residents interested, and then we'll teach our technician course, our 1-day technician course, and see what we can come up with. That would be beautiful. And they have some wonderful rooms there and lots of buildings. So someday, you never know, we might have a big beam antenna on top of one of those buildings. Philadelphia Protestant Home, W3PPH. I just made that up.
Okay.
Anyway, did I cover everything? You probably have more to say about our club, Bob.
Okay, yeah, well, I won't go too far. More probably more recognized over in July with the 13 Colonies special event, our William Penn call WM3PEN, and uh, we're very active with that. The other thing we've been pulling some interest in the hobby, we support a program called Stamps for the Wounded, which is we get about 1,000 QSL cards in July. And so, what we're going to do with the stamps, and this organization takes the stamps and give them to veterans or disabled folks to build things. And uh, we've been able to introduce non-hams to ham radio people that thought that the hobby was no longer existed, and um, we've been able to send them out either to get them to a class in their area, or at least an Elmer to work with them. So it's been a good resource. And if you go out to the WM3PE QRZ page, you'll have links and information there. But anyone else have any comments they'd like to add in? No? Well, Dan, well, thank you very much for taking the time this morning.
My
And
pleasure.
I'm sure we'll be in touch along the way, and um, maybe with the some synergy with Drew at the library, and maybe get back here into Philadelphia again to
Or maybe the Philly Maker Fair next year. We'll work out a different venue for the ham radio class.
Well, thank
sounds
you
like
very much. And I put my email in the chat room in case anybody needs my email. And thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
okay. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Everybody go to Phil Day.
Yes. Yeah. See ya.
Operate CW at Phil Day.
All right. All right. Take care. See you later.
All right. 7-3s, everybody.
7
Number 3.
3s.
Yeah, all right, 73.